The October rain patters against Emma's kitchen window as she sorts through the evening mail, her fingers still stained with purple marker from her second-grade classroom, where she'd spent the afternoon helping little Timothy sound out words that would unlock whole worlds for him. Another credit card offer, a utility bill, and then something that makes her stomach drop, a bank statement for their joint savings account. The one she and David have been building for 8 years, planning for their dream wedding and first home together. Something feels wrong about the numbers staring back at her through the envelope's transparent window. She sets the other mail aside and tears open the statement with trembling fingers, her heart already beginning to race with a premonition she doesn't want to acknowledge. The autumn sunset casts long shadows across their cramped apartment living room as Emma opens her laptop, the familiar weight of dread settling in her chest like a stone. She navigates to their online banking, the account they'd titled Our Future Together, with such hope 8 years ago when they were young and believed that love and determination could overcome anything. The screen loads, and Emma's world tilts sideways. Previous balance, $60,247. 83. Current balance, $127. 15. Last transaction, wire transfer to Valley Savings and Loan. Yesterday, while she was teaching her second-grade class about honesty and integrity, helping little Mia understand why telling the truth matters even when it's hard, Emma stares at the screen until the numbers blur together, her breathing becoming shallow. 8 years of her life, of their life together, vanished in a single transaction. She scrolls through the account history with mounting horror, seeing the pattern of her faithful contributions, $7.50 every month without fail, even when it meant shopping at thrift stores and eating ramen for dinner, even when her car broke down and she had to take the bus for 3 months to avoid dipping into their savings. David had matched her contributions for the first 2 years, back when they were young and optimistic, planning a future that seemed as solid as the oak tree in their apartment complex courtyard. His deposits were there in black and white, testament to a time when he'd shared her dream of building something permanent together. But his contributions had dwindled as his business ventures grew more important, his attention shifting to what he called bigger opportunities and strategic networking. The front door clicks open, interrupting her spiral of realization, and David's voice carries through their small apartment, smooth and confident as always. You home, babe? In here. Her voice sounds foreign to her own ears, hollow and distant. He appears in the kitchen doorway, looking like he stepped from a magazine spread about successful young entrepreneurs. His tie is loosened with calculated casualness, and he's scrolling through his phone with the focused intensity he usually reserves for what he calls important business communications. His hair is perfectly styled, still damp from what she now realizes wasn't a late client meeting, but probably a shower somewhere else entirely. "How was your day?" he asks without looking up, his thumb still moving across the screen. "Mine was incredible. Sophia and I closed the Patterson deal, and there's already interest from 3 other investors." Sophia, his business partner, with the honey blonde hair and the laugh that sounds like expensive wind chimes. The woman who calls him at midnight about urgent marketing strategies and sends him photos of properties they're supposedly scouting for investment opportunities. The woman whose Instagram feed is filled with designer handbags and weekend trips to wine country, funded by sources that Emma has never quite understood. Interesting, Emma says, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. She turns the laptop screen toward him with deliberate slowness. "Care to explain this?" David's eyes flick to the screen, and for a moment, just a moment, his practiced composure falters like a mask slipping. She sees something flash across his features, guilt, calculation, maybe even relief that the secret is finally out. Then he shrugs, that casual gesture she once found charming now feeling like a slap across her face. "Oh, that. Yeah, Sophia needed help with the down payment on that place in Hillcrest Manor. You know, the one with the infinity pool and the 3-car garage. The one that's going to triple in value once the new shopping center breaks ground. Hillcrest Manor. The exclusive development where houses start at $500,000 and climb toward the sky like glass and steel monuments to success." Emma has driven past it exactly once, marveling at the perfect landscaping and wondering what kind of people could afford such luxury. "Sophia needed help," Emma repeats slowly, each word carefully measured. With our money. Our wedding fund. It's not gone forever, David says, finally pocketing his phone and giving her his full attention, or at least, the performance of his full attention. She's going to pay us back with interest once the property appreciates. This is business, M. Investment. You have to spend money to make money. It's his favorite phrase, the one he uses to justify every expensive dinner, every weekend getaway, every purchase that seems to benefit his lifestyle more than their shared goals. You have to spend money to make money, usually followed by assurances that this investment, this opportunity, this connection will be the one that changes everything for them. Investment in what? Emma's hands clench into fists without her conscious permission. Your relationship with her? Don't be ridiculous. But his eyes shift away, focusing on the refrigerator magnets instead of her face, the ones that hold pictures of their early years together, when his smile looked genuine and his arms around her felt like safety rather than obligation. Sophia understands opportunity when she sees it. She's going places, M. She has vision. What about the places we were supposed to go together? David sighs, the sound heavy with practiced patience, the tone he uses when explaining basic concepts to people he considers intellectually inferior. You're being emotional about this. It's just money, and it's not like we were using it right now. When have we even talked about setting a wedding date? The casual cruelty of his words cuts through her like ice water. When had they talked about it? Every time she brought it up, David had reasons to postpone. The business needed more time to establish itself. The market wasn't right. They should wait until they could afford to do it properly, until his investments paid off, until the timing was perfect. Meanwhile, Sophia had apparently found someone who was ready to do things properly right now. Emma thinks about the Pinterest board she's been maintaining for 3 years, filled with wedding dresses and flower arrangements, and venues they could maybe afford if they saved for another year or two. She thinks about the conversations with her mother, the gentle questions about when she might expect a son-in-law and grandchildren, the patient explanations that David was building something important and they needed to wait for the right moment. I want you to call the bank, Emma says, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Cancel the transfer. I can't do that. Sophia's already signed the papers. The money's been committed to the escrow account. You can't just undo a business transaction because you're having second thoughts. Then you'll get the money back another way. David's expression hardens, the mask of the charming entrepreneur slipping to reveal something colder underneath. The face she's glimpsed in unguarded moments when he thinks she's not looking. The expression he wears when calculating whether someone is useful to him or merely an obstacle. Emma, you're not thinking clearly. This is a smart move for our future. You're so focused on the short-term loss that you can't see the long-term gain. That's always been your problem. You think too small. Our future. She laughs, but there's no humor in it. Only the bitter recognition of how thoroughly she's been deceived. David, there is no our future. Not anymore. You're overreacting. Get out. What? Get out of my apartment. She stands, feeling taller than she has in years, feeling the steel in her spine that 8 years of gradual erosion had almost convinced her was gone forever. Now, Emma, be reasonable. We can talk about this like adults. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. The lease is in my name. The utilities are in my name. The furniture we bought with my teacher's salary is in my name. This is my home, and I want you out of it. David stares at her for a long moment, probably calculating whether his usual charm will work, whether the right combination of apology and promise and gentle condescension can restore the balance of power he's grown accustomed to. When he sees the steel in her eyes, the steel that used to bend for him but has finally decided to break instead, he nods curtly. Fine, but you're making a mistake. Sophia and we're building something real, something bigger than this. He gestures dismissively at their small apartment, at the life they've shared for 8 years, at her dreams that have apparently been too small for his expanding ambitions. I'm sure you are. He gathers his things with theatrical efficiency, muttering about her inability to see the bigger picture, about small-town thinking and missed opportunities. Emma watches from the kitchen window as he loads his car, her reflection ghost-like in the rain-streaked glass, barely visible against the growing darkness outside. Her phone buzzes with a text from her sister Claire. Saw David's Instagram post. Congrats on the new house. When's the housewarming? Mom wants to know if she should start planning to visit. Emma's blood turns to ice water. She opens the app with trembling fingers, her thumb sliding across the screen like she's defusing a bomb. There's David, arm around Sophia in front of a massive colonial house that looks like it belongs on a movie set. Sophia's smile is radiant, her left hand prominently displayed with a diamond ring that could fund a small country's education budget. The caption reads, "New beginnings with my queen. When you know, you know." Sometimes life surprises you with exactly what you've been waiting for. Emma scrolls through the comments, each congratulation feeling like another knife twist. High school friends who still think she and David are together, colleagues from his various business ventures celebrating his success, strangers drawn to the aspirational lifestyle he's curating online. Then she sees it. A comment from someone named Jackson Wellington 3. "Beautiful home, beautiful woman. Best investment I've made yet." Jackson Wellington. She recognizes the name from the society pages of the newspaper she sometimes reads during her lunch break. Pharmaceutical heir, 35 years old, never married, and according to Forbes, worth approximately $47 million. The kind of man who appears in charity auction photos and museum gala coverage, always in perfectly tailored suits with a different stunning woman on his arm. Emma stares at the comment until her eyes burn, trying to process what she's seeing. Then she screenshots everything. The photos, the comments, the timeline that shows David's post going live yesterday afternoon while she was helping struggling readers sound out difficult words. 3 days later, Emma's phone rings while she's grading papers at her kitchen table, red pen poised over Tommy Martinez's creative story about a dragon who learns to share. The number is unknown, but something about its persistence makes her answer. "Hello, Emma? This is David." His voice sounds different, smaller, stripped of its usual confident modulation. We need to talk." Emma sets down her red pen, giving him her full attention for what she suspects will be the last time. "About what?" "Sophia's gone." The words hang in the air between them, loaded with implications that Emma is only beginning to understand. "Gone where?" "She married Jackson Wellington. Yesterday. In Vegas." His voice cracks on the word married, the sound of a man whose carefully constructed reality has crumbled around him. "She took the house money and—" "Emma, I think I made a mistake." The satisfaction that floods through her is immediate and fierce, a rush of vindication that she tries to temper with basic human decency. She fails. "You think?" "She said she loved me. She said we were building something together, that the house was just the beginning. She had all these plans." His voice trails off, and Emma can almost see him sitting somewhere, probably in his car or a coffee shop, staring at his phone and wondering how his perfect plan went so spectacularly wrong. Funny how that works. Emma's voice is steady, almost conversational. "Did she take your money too, or just mine?" The silence stretches long enough for her to understand the answer. "Emma, please. I know I messed up, but we had 8 years together. That has to count for something. We had plans. We had a future mapped out. You know me better than anyone." 8 years. 8 years of his promises, his grand plans, his assurances that their future was just around the corner. 8 years of her patience, her support, her money, her belief in a man who turned out to be nothing more than an expensive illusion. "It counted for $60,000, she says, each word sharp and precise. "To Sophia. I can get the money back. I'll figure something out. I'll sell my car, liquidate my business assets. We can start over, Em. We can go back to how things were." Emma looks around her small apartment, at the pictures on the refrigerator, at the couch they'd bought together at a furniture outlet, at the life she'd built around a man who saw her as a stepping stone rather than a destination. "No, David. We can't." She hangs up before he can respond and immediately calls her lawyer friend, Jessica Martinez, whom she'd met at teacher conferences when Jessica's daughter was in her class 2 years ago. "Emma, what's wrong? You sound terrible." "I need legal advice. About stolen money and fraudulent transfers, and what happens when someone uses your joint savings account to fund their affair." 3 hours later, Emma sits in the downtown law office of Patricia Chun, Jessica's colleague who specializes in financial fraud and family law. Patricia's office smells like coffee and determination, and her wall displays an impressive array of degrees and commendations that speak to decades of fighting for people who've been wronged by those they trusted most. "This is textbook financial misappropriation," Patricia says, reviewing Emma's bank statements and the documentation she's gathered with the methodical precision of someone who's seen similar betrayals countless times. Joint account doesn't mean he had the right to transfer funds without your consent, especially for personal benefit to a third party. But we weren't married, Emma says, voicing the fear that's been gnawing at her since she first realized the scope of David's betrayal. Does that matter legally? Doesn't matter at all. You have clear documentation of your contributions, written evidence of the account's intended purpose, and Patricia taps the screenshots of David's Instagram posts. These actually help your case significantly. He's admitted publicly that he used your joint funds for this woman's benefit. He's practically gift-wrapped a confession. Emma feels something she hasn't experienced in years: hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope she'd maintained about her relationship with David, but real hope based on facts and law and the possibility of justice. What are my options? We start with demand letters. Formal notification that we're aware of the unauthorized transfer and demanding immediate restitution. If he doesn't respond appropriately, we can pursue civil litigation. The fact that his accomplice is now married to someone else actually strengthens our position. Patricia leans back in her leather chair, steepling her fingers in a gesture that reminds Emma of the best principles she's worked with: people who combine compassion with an unshakable commitment to doing what's right. I have to ask, Emma, are you prepared for this to get ugly? Men like your ex-partner don't usually accept responsibility gracefully. They tend to escalate, to blame everyone but themselves. Emma thinks about 8 years of gradually diminishing returns, of promises that evaporated like morning mist, of her own dreams deferred while she supported someone else's ambitions. I'm prepared, she says. A week later, David appears at Emma's door looking like he hasn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair is disheveled, and his clothes, the expensive button-down shirts and tailored pants that had once impressed her, look slept in. The confident entrepreneur persona has cracked, revealing something desperate and diminished underneath. Emma, please. You can't sue me. I'm trying to get the money back from Sophia, but she won't return my calls. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. Shocking, Emma says, not inviting him in. She stays in the doorway, using her body as a barrier between him and the sanctuary she's begun to rebuild. Her new husband's lawyers sent me a cease and desist letter. They're threatening to file harassment charges if I contact her again. They froze the accounts, Emma. Everything's tied up in legal paperwork. Sounds like a you problem. David's face crumples, and for a moment, he looks like the young man she fell in love with 8 years ago, vulnerable and lost and genuinely sorry. But Emma has learned to see past the performance to the calculation underneath. Emma, I love you. I've always loved you. I just got confused for a while. Sophia, she made me think I wanted things I didn't really want. She made me believe I could be someone I'm not. Emma studies his face, looking for any trace of the man she once planned to marry. All she sees is desperation and self-pity and the practiced manipulation of someone who's learned that the right combination of contrition and charm can usually get him what he wants. Do you know what I realized, David? You never loved me. You loved what I represented: stability, security, someone who would always be there to clean up your messes and fund your dreams and ask for nothing in return. That's not true. When's my birthday? He opens his mouth, then closes it, a look of panic flashing across his features. What's my favorite book? My biggest fear? The name of the student I stayed after school to tutor every Tuesday for 2 years because her parents work 3 jobs and can't help with homework? Silence stretches between them like a chasm. You don't know me at all. You never bothered to know me. I was just a convenient source of funding and emotional support while you figured out what you really wanted. David's shoulders slump, the last of his pretense falling away. I'll find a way to pay you back. I promise. I'll get a loan. I'll sell everything I own. Just don't destroy me over this. Your promises aren't worth the air they're spoken into. She closes the door gently, the soft click sounding like the period at the end of a very long, painful sentence. 2 months later, Emma receives a check for $63,847. 22, her original savings plus interest and legal fees. David had been forced to sell his car, liquidate his business equipment, and take out a personal loan at an interest rate that made Patricia whistle low and shake her head. The court had been unsympathetic to his arguments about business partnerships and investment opportunities. Emma deposits the check with a sense of ceremony, watching the numbers appear in her account with something approaching awe. 8 years of sacrifice, validated by the legal system and returned to her with compound interest. It feels like more than money. It feels like justice. She immediately begins house hunting. The cottage on Riverside Drive isn't much to look at from the outside. A modest 2-bedroom with peeling paint and an overgrown garden that looks like it hasn't been tended in years. But as Emma walks through the empty rooms with realtor Janet Morrison, she can see past the surface flaws to the potential underneath. The previous owners were an elderly couple, Janet explains, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors that run throughout the main level. The Hendersons. They maintained it well structurally, but it needs some cosmetic updating. New paint, some landscaping, maybe update the kitchen appliances. Emma runs her hand along the original hardwood floors, imagining the stories these walls could tell. Stories of love that lasted, of promises kept, of building something real that could weather any storm. The morning light streams through windows that need washing, creating patterns on the floor that remind her of the kaleidoscope her grandmother gave her as a child. In the main bedroom, French doors open onto a small balcony overlooking the backyard. There's an enormous oak tree, probably 100 years old, its branches reaching toward the windows like an embrace. Emma imagines reading there on weekend mornings, grading papers in the dappled sunlight, maybe even writing the children's book she's been thinking about for years. The kitchen needs work, Janet says apologetically, opening cabinets that reveal their age with creaks and groans. And the bathroom fixtures are pretty dated. But Emma sees past the avocado green tiles and the faucet that drips with persistent optimism. She sees herself cooking meals she actually wants to eat, hosting dinner parties for teacher friends, creating a home that reflects her own taste rather than someone else's vision of success. I'll take it. Janet blinks, surprised by the speed of the decision. Don't you want to think about it? Maybe have an inspection? I want the inspection, Emma says, but I don't need to think about it. This is my house. 6 months later, Emma kneels in her garden, planting lavender along the stone path. She laid herself with YouTube tutorials and determination that surprised even her. The cottage behind her glows in the morning light, painted a soft sage green that complements the climbing roses she's been training along the front porch. Every weekend brings new projects, refinishing the hardwood floors, updating the bathroom with subway tile and a clawfoot tub she found at an estate sale, building raised beds for the vegetables she's learning to grow. Her phone buzzes with a text from Jessica. Saw the article about David in the Business Journal. Former entrepreneur files for bankruptcy following failed investments. Karma's a beautiful thing. Emma smiles, brushing soil from her hands. She hasn't thought about David in weeks, hasn't wondered what he's doing or whether he's learned his lesson or found another generous woman to fund his ambitions. Some chapters close so completely that even their echoes fade away. A car pulls into her driveway, and her elderly neighbor Mrs. Patterson emerges with a covered dish and the kind of smile that promises gossip along with casserole. I made too much tuna casserole again, she says, which is her weekly excuse to check on Emma and share neighborhood news. That recipe just doesn't scale down properly. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. Would you like some coffee? I just brewed a fresh pot. They sit on Emma's front porch, watching the mailman make his rounds and discussing Mrs. Patterson's ongoing feud with the Homeowners Association about her garden gnome collection. The morning air carries the scent of the herbs Emma planted by the kitchen window, basil and oregano, and thyme that she actually uses now that she's cooking for someone she cares about. You've really brought this place back to life, Mrs. Patterson says, gesturing toward the flower beds that Emma has spent months nurturing from bare dirt to riots of color. The Hendersons would be so pleased to see it loved again. They put their heart into this place for 43 years. Emma looks out over her small kingdom. The herb garden, the bird bath that attracts cardinals every morning, the oak tree where she's hung a swing that neighborhood children eye with longing. The Hendersons had built something that lasted, something real and permanent and worth preserving. I think I'm the one who's come back to life, she says. That evening, Emma sits at her kitchen table, the one she bought herself, not because it fit someone else's vision, but because she loved its simple lines and solid construction, grading her students' creative writing assignments. Timothy's story about a brave knight rescuing himself from a tower makes her smile. Sarah's tale of a girl who builds her own castle instead of waiting for a prince to provide one resonates so deeply that Emma writes, "Beautiful message," in purple ink across the top. Jackson Chun, her quietest student, has written about a teacher who discovers a treasure buried in her own backyard. She looked for it everywhere else first, his story concludes, but it was there all along, waiting for her to be ready to find it. Outside her window, fireflies begin their nightly dance above the garden she's planted with her own hands, fed with her own determination, and nurtured with the knowledge that some of life's most beautiful things grow from the soil of our deepest disappointments. The cottage settles around her with creaks and sighs, the comfortable sounds of a home that knows it's cherished. Emma opens her journal, a leather-bound book she'd bought herself as a housewarming gift, and writes, "Today I learned that sometimes the best investment isn't in someone else's dreams, but in the courage to build your own. The treasure was buried in my own backyard all along. I just had to be brave enough to start digging." The phone rings once from the living room and goes silent. Emma doesn't bother checking who called. These days, everyone who matters has her attention, and everyone who doesn't has learned to find their own way. The oak tree rustles outside her window, and Emma raises her coffee mug, her favorite, bought because she loved its cheerful yellow color, not because it matched someone else's aesthetic, in a silent toast to the woman she's become. The one who finally learned that the most important person to invest in was herself. Tomorrow she'll wake up in her own house, tend her own garden, teach children who look at her with respect and affection, and fall asleep knowing that every decision that brought her here was hers to make. The responsible daughter has become a woman who takes responsibility for her own happiness, and the difference she's discovered makes all the difference in the world.